1987. The golden age of the hustle. The trading floors of New York were swimming in cocaine and cheap cologne. Everyone was looking for the next big thing. They found it in Reseda, California. ZZZZ Best. A carpet cleaning service operating out of a suburban garage. But the ticker tape said it was worth $280 million. The CEO was Barry Minkow. A 16-year-old boy wonder. He promised to clean up America's disasters with industrial efficiency. The press loved him. The banks threw cash at him. But Barry wasn't in the cleaning business. He was in the storytelling business. And the most expensive story on Wall Street was a total fabrication. The San Fernando Valley in the mid-80s was a concrete skillet. Heat waves shimmered off the hoods of parked Camaros. It was a landscape of mini-malls, stucco apartments, and endless asphalt. Far away from the cool marble lobbies of Manhattan. This was where the American dream went to sweat. In a cramped garage on a cul-de-sac, the air was stale. Smelling of industrial solvent and teenage desperation. Barry Minkow sat behind a folding table. A heavy-set kid with a bad haircut and a phone glued to his ear. He was 16. While other kids were worrying about prom dates, Barry was worrying about payroll. He had started ZZZZ Best to be a tycoon. He wanted the respect. He wanted the fast cars he saw on TV. But the reality was a bucket of dirty water. Carpet cleaning is a grind. You're on your knees. You're scrubbing out other people's filth for pennies. The overhead was eating him alive. Chemicals cost money. Gas costs money. Employees demand checks that don't bounce. The banks in Reseda were small, beige fortresses. Barry walked in with a suit that didn't quite fit. He smiled that wide, charming, salesman smile. But bankers don't lend to children with zero collateral. So Barry learned a new skill. The art of the float. Writing a check from one empty account to cover a check in another empty account. It was a juggling act performed on a razor's edge. He stole his grandmother's jewelry to pawn for cash. He staged break-ins at his own offices to claim insurance. He wasn't building a business anymore. He was building a survival mechanism. The 1980s were screaming a message from every television set. Greed is good. Success is the only virtue. If you weren't rich, you were invisible. Barry looked at the carpet steamers rusting in his garage. He looked at the unpaid bills stacking up like autumn leaves. He realized that dirt wasn't where the money was. The money was in the disaster. Insurance restoration. When a pipe bursts and floods a mansion. When a fire guts a living room. The insurance companies pay out millions to fix it. They don't haggle like a housewife over a rug cleaning. They cut the check. Barry didn't have the equipment to fix a flooded house. He didn't have the crew to rebuild a burnt wall. But he realized something crucial in the hot valley sun. He didn't need to do the work. He just needed the paper to prove he did. He started forging documents on a typewriter. Fake contracts from fake insurance adjusters. Claims for water damage that never happened. Restoration for fires that never burned. He took these papers to the banks. The beige fortresses opened their gates. The bankers saw the accounts receivable. $20,000 here. $50,000 there. They didn't see a sweating teenager lying through his teeth. They saw a prodigy. They saw the next big client. The money started to flow into the garage. It wasn't earned. It was borrowed against a ghost. Barry bought a red Ferrari. He bought a mansion with a pool. He drove down Ventura Boulevard like a king. The neon signs reflected in his sunglasses. The lie had become the lifestyle. And in the haze of 1980s Los Angeles, nobody bothered to check if the king had any clothes. Or if he had ever actually cleaned a single carpet. The smog settled over the city. Hiding the cracks in the pavement. Hiding the rot in the ledger. Barry Minkow was ready for the big time. He was ready to take ZZZZ Best public. From the garage to Wall Street. A path paved entirely with fool's gold. To understand the collapse, you have to understand the machine. Barry wasn't running a carpet cleaner anymore. He was running a Ponzi scheme. But it wasn't the classic stamps or coupon. It was built on the boring, invisible world of insurance restoration. Interstate appraisal services. A name that sounds authoritative. A name that sounds like granite and steel. It was a mailbox and a telephone. The man answering the phone was Tom Paget, an insurance claims adjuster who had gone rogue. Barry realized he needed a verifier. Banks don't trust teenagers. Banks trust paper trails confirmed by third parties. So they built a loop. Step 1, the fake contract. Barry types up a restoration job for a non-existent building. Value, $3 million. He claims the building had water damage. Massive water damage. Step 2, the verification. The bank calls the insurance adjuster to confirm. They call Interstate Appraisal. Tom Paget picks up the phone. He confirms the job is real. He confirms ZZZZ Best is the contractor. Step 3, the funding. The bank lends Barry the money to start the work. Step 4, the payoff. Barry takes the bank's money. He pays off the previous bank. He schemes the top for the Ferrari. He pays Paget his cut. It was a perpetual motion machine of debt. A shark that had to keep swimming or die. But the numbers were getting too big. You can hide a $10,000 lie in a ledger. You can't hide a $100 million lie. Unless you go public. The initial public offering. The holy grail of the 80s grifter. If Barry could sell stock to the public, he could pay off all the banks at once. He could turn the fake money into real equity. But Wall Street demands more than a phone call. They demand auditors. Ernst & Winnie. One of the Big 8 accounting firms. Men in gray suits with sharp pencils. They didn't care about Barry's smile. They wanted to see the work. They looked at the books. $7 million contract in Sacramento. A massive restoration job. The auditors said, "Take us there." Panic. The job didn't exist. The building didn't exist. Barry had 48 hours to manifest a disaster site out of thin air. This is the moment the fraud went physical. Barry flew to Sacramento. He scouted for a building under construction. He found a massive complex. Unfinished. Looking somewhat like a disaster zone. He didn't own it. He didn't know who owned it. He found the leasing agent. He convinced them he was a prospective tenant. He asked for a tour. He asked for the keys to show his partner. He had the stage. Now he needed the props. ZZZZ Best signs were printed overnight. He pasted them over the real construction sign. But restoration work is loud. It's industrial. Silence would give it away. So he hired actors. No. Too risky. He hired noise. Industrial generators. He rented huge, diesel-chugging generators. He placed them in the hallways. He turned them on full blast. They powered nothing. They just made noise. A deafening roar of fake productivity. He bribed the security guard with $50. If anyone asks, "Where's ZZZZ Best?" The auditors arrived. They walked through the site. They saw the signs. They heard the roar of the generators. They saw Barry shouting orders at nobody. The sheer volume of the noise overwhelmed their skepticism. Sensory overload suppresses critical thinking. The auditor couldn't ask questions. Because he literally couldn't hear himself think. He checked the box. Site verified. The stock soared. $18 a share. Market cap, $280 million. Barry was the youngest CEO in history to take a company public. He was on Oprah. He was the golden boy. Let's analyze the psychology of the victim. Why did the bankers fall for it? Why did the lawyers believe it? It wasn't stupidity. It was formatting. Barry presented the lies in the correct font. On the correct letterhead. With the correct jargon. Corporate America is a ritual. If you perform the ritual correctly, nobody looks at the content. They only look at the form. The halo effect. Barry was young, energetic, and successful. People want to be around success. To question him was to be a cynic. To question him was to be anti-entrepreneur. The bankers were terrified of losing the account. If they asked too many questions, Barry threatened to take his business to the bank across the street. Fear of missing out drove the due diligence. Or the lack thereof. But the mechanics were grinding. The friction was building up heat. Every month, Barry needed more fake jobs to pay the old investors. $10 million in fake revenue. Then $20 million. Then $40 million. The lie had to grow exponentially. The paperwork became a blizzard. He had a room full of people just typing fake invoices. Using different typewriters to make them look different. Using different colored pens. Spilling coffee on them to make them look used. The forgery became an art form. They were aging documents like fine wine. Creating a history that never happened. Meanwhile, the real business, the carpet cleaning, was losing money. It was a corpse. The only thing keeping it moving was the electricity of the fraud. Barry was sleeping 3 hours a night. Driven by adrenaline and fear. He knew one loose thread would unravel the tapestry. One person looking too closely. One phone call to the actual building owner. One auditor who didn't mind the noise. But nobody looked. Because everybody was making money. The lawyers, paid. The accountants, paid. The bankers, promoted. Fraud is a cooperative act. The victim holds the door open for the predator. Because the victim thinks they are entering a palace. When they are actually walking into a slaughterhouse. Barry built a wall of fake evidence so high that it blocked out the sun. No one could see over it. No one wanted to climb it. They just stood in its shadow and counted their commissions. The machinery of the lie was perfect. Or so Barry thought. But mechanics have a flaw. Even the most perfect engine can be destroyed by a single grain of sand. Or in Barry's case, a housewife. It wasn't the SEC that brought down the empire. It wasn't the FBI. It was a housewife. In a quiet kitchen in the valley. She was looking at her credit card statement. A charge of $300. An overcharge from ZZZZ Best for a cleaning job. She called to complain. They brushed her off. They treated her like a nuisance. Arrogance is the anesthesia of the criminal. It numbs you to the small risks. She didn't let it go. She called the Los Angeles Times. A reporter named Daniel Axt picked up the phone. He was already suspicious. A teenage tycoon. A carpet cleaner with margins higher than Apple. He started pulling the thread. He drove to the Interstate Appraisal office. He found the mailbox. He found the empty room. He found the silence where the industry should be. The story ran. The ink hit the paper on a Sunday morning. By Monday, the phones at ZZZZ Best stopped ringing. By Tuesday, the stock began to bleed. $18. $10. $4. The panic was instant. The bankers who had dined him suddenly didn't know him. The lawyers scrambled to shred the evidence. Barry tried to spin it. He went on TV one last time. But the charm had curdled. The eyes that once looked visionary, now just looked like those of a scared kid. Zero. The stock hit the floor. $100 million of investor money evaporated. Gone like steam from a carpet wand. The police came to the mansion. They took the Ferrari. They took the pool. They took Barry. Convicted on 57 counts of fraud. Sentenced to 25 years. He was 21 years old. He walked into prison a boy. But he left behind a legacy that grew up too fast. The 80s ended in that courtroom. The decade of "greed is good" hit a wall. But did we learn? Look at the market today. Look at the startups with no revenue and billion-dollar valuations. Barry didn't invent the game. He just played it without a safety net. We want to believe in the prodigy. We want to believe the rules of gravity don't apply. We want the magic trick so badly. We willingly close our eyes to the wires. ZZZZ Best wasn't a failure of the system. It was the system working exactly as designed. It rewarded the appearance of value over the value itself. Barry sits in a cell. The Ferrari is auctioned off. The investors go back to work. And somewhere in a garage, another kid is looking at a typewriter, dreaming of a way out. Case closed.